Uploads in general terms, rules, and comment logs. Okay, here we're going to see one of the first operations that we can perform. And this would be grabbing some information and uploading it into whatever field we want, whatever destination, and doing this based on a condition. When I say based on the conditions, what I mean is, let's say I want to upload a value in a certain field, but I don't want this upload to be performed always. Obviously, we could change the diagram of our process, add two upload or system tasks, and say, well, when the status, for example, of the process is approved, we go this way and we upload the status approved. And when it's not approved, it goes this way and it uploads the status rejected. But we don't have to do this because when we're configuring an upload, there's an option here that says conditions, and we can click here on this little editor. And a window is going to pop up where we can add whatever conditions that have to be met in order for the uploads to be performed. So in order for whatever data that we want to upload, combine, or whatever we want to do with it, we can condition it. So unless these conditions are met, the upload is not going to be performed. And besides, we could also create conditions per line of group of fields. Obviously, only when we're working with groups of fields. So let's say I'm uploading a value in a column of a group of fields, and there's 10 different lines of information. So we could say, well, I only want to upload this value in all those lines that meet a certain condition. For example, that have the status approved. The ones that have the status rejected, I don't want to upload the information. Okay, so we can create general conditions. This would be general conditions with general fields that we have in the panel, suffixes, prefixes, and so on. And then we can create conditions per line of group of fields. This option is only going to be activated when the destination of our upload is a column of a group of fields. So here we have an example where it says save in this field here, and here we set up the conditions. Okay, so we're going to save some information in this field. Here, the source of that information. From where we're going to extract the information, we've got all kinds of different options. We have panel, where we could select another panel field. We have manual, where we could type in some manual input. Okay, and here are the conditions. If these conditions are met, whatever we've indicated down here to extract is going to be dropped into this field here. Another thing we have to take into account is when we're configuring the system task, there's two options. One of them is called rule, and the other one is called other TS or other system task. Basically, the first one is going to allow us to bring business rules to the panel of our process. This is basically the same as bringing any field from the dictionary of terms to the panel of the process. But there's a slight difference. When I want to bring a field to the panel of my process, what I have to do is, well, I can go to panel and I can grab those fields and I can grab those fields from the dictionary of terms and drop them into the panel. But when we want to bring business rules to the panel of the process, the only way we can do this is through the system task. And we have to click on this button here. And once we do it, we're going to bring the business rule to the panel of our process. And from that moment on, we can start using that value and we can do whatever we want with it. We're going to talk more about this later on, so I'm not going to go in depth here. I'm not going to enter in a lot of detail, but we'll see it later on. This other option that's called other system task is very useful when we want to copy operations from other system tasks that we've already configured. So let's say I have this system task configured with 20 or 30 different operations, and basically here I just want to import them. I don't want to create them again from scratch. So in the same way we can copy a form for a personal task, with this option here, we could copy operations in a system task. Here we have an example of what would happen when we're working with business rules. So let's say I bring a business rule to the panel of my process. And in my business rule, I have a certain value. For example, it says hello. What's going to happen when the flow goes through this system task? It's going to change the value of the business rule because here, down here, we selected that manually when the flow goes through the system task. we want to upload the value hello. And here we also indicated that the destination is this business rule. So when we do these type of uploads, we can update the value of the business rule in the panel of the process, but we could also update the value in the business rule. So what I'm trying to say here is that remember when we were using suffixes, we could actually change the value in the panel and decide if we wanted that change to also be applied in the source. We could say, well, I want to update the values from the panel to the source record, or vice versa. Well, with business rules, it's exactly the same. We have our value in the business rule, but if we want to change this value in a process and update the business rule, we could also do that. So in this case, the business rule would be the source. The panel is a destination, and we can choose whether we want to update only the panel or also update the business rule. Now here we have another example of how to configure a direct upload when the destination is a comment log. So basically what we want to do here is grab any field that we have in the panel of our process and update some text. So we want to update a comment log. So as it says here, when the upload destination is a comment log, the source is only, the origin is only going to offer us the comment logs of the process. If the upload is triggered with a button, the username of the person who clicked the button is going to be added to the comment log. If the upload is performed by a system task, instead of adding a username, the following text is going to be added, and it's going to put motor and the code of the system task. So let's say I'm in a process, and there's several people who are adding text to the comment log. Okay, we already know that this could be done manually. You just enter the comment log and you enter a bit of text, and when you do that, your name and the date and the time in which you added that comment is going to appear in the comment log. But let's say we want to do this a little bit differently. We add a field in the form, and whoever wants types in some values in that field, and afterwards they click on a button and those values are uploaded into the comment log. Okay. Well, in that case, the name of the person who was performing that form is going to appear in the comment log, and the exact moment in which he added those comments is also going to appear in the comment log. But let's say I want to add text automatically, and there's no human intervention. For example, maybe I add a system task in the diagram of my process, and I want this system task to add some comments, maybe depending on some conditions. So once the system task adds these comments, the name of the person who performed this action is actually going to be BPM motor and the code of the system task, because it's actually an automatic trigger. It's something that the system is doing automatically. It's not a person. So this is the indication that the system automatically interacted with the comment log. Another interesting thing that we could do is grab all the contents that we have in a comment log and drop them into a text field. Now, why is this interesting? Because sometimes we want to start a process, but when it comes to a certain point, we want to grab all the information of that process and drop it into an old family, into a family record. Or maybe we want to send all that information to a totally different process. Okay, and there's some other scenarios where we might want to do this. And when we do this, we also want to deliver, or we want to send all the comment logs. So maybe we want to send general information like a name, a surname, a status field, but we also want to grab all the comment log and store it somewhere. This is why it's very interesting to be able to grab all the content from a comment log and drop it into field, so that later on we can use this field to deviate it to another process or to send it maybe to an old family record and so on. Here we have an example of how to configure a direct upload when the destination is a library field and the source is also a library field. So here when I say save in, this is going to be the destination. So where do I want to save the information? In a document in a library field. Okay. And then here, the only option that's going to be available down here is going to be another library field that we have in the panel. And then down here, an option is going to appear that says, do you want to upload selection or upload all of them? So what's going to happen in this case? If we have one library field, that's the source or the origin, and another library field, that's the destination, what the system is going to do, it's going to copy the information from the source and create an exact copy of that document or of those documents in the destination. When I say documents, I'm referring to any type of file that's stored in the library. And then down here, when we say we want to only move the ones that are selected or move all of them, what this is going to do, it's going to allow us to, let's say I'm in a form, I'm in a personal task or in a star message event form, and I go to a library field and I see 10 different documents. I can actually select them. There's an option that allows you to select one or more than one. And then the system task is going to take into account which ones were selected in order to move only those that were selected with human intervention in the form. Okay, so only the ones that are selected, or just grab all of the files and drop them into the new library. So we know that this feature here is going to actually create copies of information. It's going to grab all the information, all the documentation, or all the files from the source, and it's going to drop them into the destination. It's going to create a copy in the destination library. Okay, now that we've had a brief introduction to these different operations that the uploader system task can perform, I'm going to actually show you how they're configured in the application. In order to do this, I've created a form where there's all kinds of different operations, and I'm going to explain what these operations do. After that, we're going to see how they're configured, okay? And we're also going to trigger these operations so you can see the result. So here I have the configuration, but I'm also going to open this form so we can see its execution. In order to do this, I'm going to grab this link here. I'm going to drop it into this browser tab. And here we can see the form. All right, here we have a field, it's called price, for example, and we can add here a price, for example, 100. And this operation, what it's going to do, is this calculation we can see here in the tooltip. Okay, we're going to have the price, and we're going to subtract the price multiplied by a certain discount. And this discount has to be either 0.1 up to 1. It can't be more. So let's say here I put a 5. See, it's going to tell me, no, this is not correct. So I'm going to put a 0.5. Okay, so my discount is going to be the price, and the discount is going to be 50%. So I'm going to click here on ordinary operation. Okay, so here we can see that didn't work. It's just giving me a 0. Why didn't this work? I'm going to check the configuration. And here in this button, we can see the system task that I'm trying to trigger with this operation. It has two options here. It says save the form before executing the system task and update the form after executing the system task. I'm going to make sure both of these are marked. I'm going to save and exit. Okay, I'm going to update this form. Okay, there we go. So now I'm going to do this exact same thing again. I'm going to put 100 and here 0.5 and let's see what happens. Okay, now it is working. Why wasn't it working before? Because when I enter my uploads, there's something very important I have to take into account. The first thing that's very important is, do we want to save the information in the form before we trigger this calculation? In this case, it's a mathematical operation. And do I want to update the information after executing the system task? In this case, both of these options are required. Why are they required? Because when I enter the form, even though I drop in some text here, it's not really saved in the panel. All I've done is let's say I wrote the information here in the form. And the same here, I just put, I don't know, 0.2. And by doing so, I'm not really saving the information. All I'm doing is dropping the information in this user interface layer, okay? But the information is not really stored in the database. So when I click this button, the first thing I want to do is store this information in the database. I want to grab this information and I want to save it. And once it's saved, I want it to perform this mathematical operation. Once I perform the mathematical operation, I want it to be displayed in the form. This is why it's also very important to mark this option here, because if I don't update the form after executing this calculation, the system is not going to display the information in the form. It's not going to show me the result in the form. Okay, so in this scenario, it's very important for me to mark both of these. Another very important thing to take into account is that this is going to require resources of the system, and it's not very good for performance. So when I'm creating a lot of operations in a button, obviously in this case, it's not going to be a lot of time because there's just one very simple, quick operation. But let's say I have 30, 40 different operations. And all those operations, it might take us a couple seconds. And besides, if I mark these, it might take me maybe half a second more. So I always want to use these whenever they're strictly necessary. I don't want to use them all the time. So maybe there's other system tasks that I can perform where I don't need these options marked. Okay, so we always have to take this into account. So here we can see what this button is doing. Basically, we enter a price, we enter a discount, we click on this button, and it applies a discount. Okay, in this case, 20%. If I put 0.1, it's going to be a 10%. Here we can see the result. If I can put, if I want to, I can put 0.9, and there we got a 90%. Here we have the result is just 10. Okay, so we can see this is working. How did I configure this button? All I had to do is give the button a name. I actually gave it a description, so it would appear as a tooltip. And here I added an action. And when I click on Add Actions, I have to select the action System Task, this one over here. I mark it, I click on Accept, and here I'm going to select the operation. What type of operation do you want this system task to perform? I'm going to say I want it to upload information. What type of upload do you want? Well, I want this first one here. Obviously, initially it's a little bit difficult to know how to configure all these system tasks because there's so many options and there's so many possible combinations that it might be a little bit difficult because we don't know them all by heart. But little by little with practice, it's going to be quite easy to find all these different types of operations. So in this case, we wanted an uploader system task. Here we can see there's some other types of system tasks appearing, but we know we don't want to deviate. We know we don't want to use information from an external database. We know we don't want to create something from scratch. We know we don't want to delete something, okay? So in this case, it's an uploader. We're going to upload information into a certain field. And here, if we want to do a calculation like this one, as I mentioned, it's important to save the information before executing the system task. And after executing the system task, we also want to update the form. Okay, so we'd mark these two checks. Here we'd select the function, uploads information or calculated value to panel, because here we're not going to be working with groups of fields, so we know that none of these three are going to be useful. We don't need to modify family elements. We don't need to count panel documents. We don't need to upload in a counter. Okay, so we know it's going to be this first one. When we hit the button continue, it's going to allow us to define the operation. And now here, it's quite straightforward. We have to select what type of operation or function we want. As we mentioned before, we could copy other system tasks. We could bring a business rule to the panel. We know that we don't want any of these. We can create a direct upload. We're going to see some of these later on. We can maybe create operations based on date fields. This one is not the one we want either, because basically what we want to do is a mathematical operation with numeric fields. So I'm going to click here, and it's going to tell me, okay, where do you want to store the result? And here I'm going to indicate the field that I have in the panel of my process where I want to store the result. Now what field is the one I need? It's this one here that's called result. We can see it down here. So I'm going to click here on mathematical, save in, and the field is going to be result. So here is where I'm going to store the result of my operation. I'll click continue, and here I can build my formula. Okay, all I have to do is write down whatever formula I want. For example, 2 times 3 times 5, and then I can say times 4 plus, and then I can also add panel fields. For example, price minus discount, and something like that. Okay, we can close it, then we can maybe divide it between uh, 352, whatever we want, okay? So this could be our formula. We could also combine it with business rule results, okay? So I could add panel fields, business rules, and start building my formula. This formula can be quite advanced. There's lots of different options like maximum, minimum, there's if operations. So let's say this is the way of configuring these formulas. Quite simple, okay? I'm not going to save it because we already have one mathematical operation, the one I want. Okay, so it's this one here. And let's see, the operation was just the price minus, and then we open a parenthesis, and we have the price again multiplied by the current discount. And then we close the parenthesis. This is a very simple example, but we want to keep it simple for now because what's important is that we understand this. Okay, if we want to know more about these different types of calculations and how to build different formulas in these mathematical operations, we can always check the documentation in the knowledge base. Okay, so there we go. We've already seen how to configure this. Now we're going to the next one. Here, for example, we can indicate the number of licenses we want to purchase, for example, 10. And here, what's the price of these licenses, for example, 25. And then here we've added a maximum and minimum operation. And as it says here, it says this income calculates the price of the licenses, applying a progressive discount on the amount of licenses based on the amount of licenses acquired. For example, up to 20 pays 100%. From 20 to 30, 50%. And more is going to be paying 25% of the license. So let's start with something smaller quantity, less than 20, okay? So if we say each license is 100 and we only want 10 licenses, it should charge us 100% of the price. Okay, let's see. So from 1 to 10, says up to 20 pays 100. Doesn't look like this is actually working. Let me check the configuration. Okay, just made sure my calculation was correct. So I'm going to try one another time. So here we're going to say I want 10 licenses and each one is 100. And I'm going to click here. Okay, now it's correct. It's 1000. So 10 times 100, 1000. And it says that we're going to pay 100% of the price up to 20. But let's see what happens if I put, for example, 25. So here I'm going to say, let's say the license is just one. Okay, that's correct. Here I have one. That's correct. Now let's say I put 25 here. Okay, so now it's not charging me 25, only 22.5. Why? Because from 20 to 30, it's applying a 50% discount. And it says more than 50 is going to pay 20% of the price. So I'm going to put 50 here, 55. Okay, obviously we'd have to do this using a calculator, but we can see several discounts were applied. So it's not charging me, sorry, I put price here. Here I actually only want one. What I wanted was 55 here. Okay, so now to the first 20, it's applying 100%. From 20 to 30, it's going to be applying a 50% discount, and more than 50 is only going to be paying 20% of the price. We're going to test this with a calculator. So basically, we're saying that our first 20 licenses, we're going to multiply them by 1. Okay, this value we have down here. And all of this is going to be added to another 30 licenses because we set up to 50. So 30 is going to be multiplied by 0.5. We're going to close the parenthesis. And now we're also going to say plus, since we have 55 licenses, we're going to say plus another 5 licenses multiplied by 0.25. We're going to close the parenthesis. Okay, so the total would be 36.25. Okay, so we can see our formula is working correctly. it's applying these discounts correctly. Okay, so here we've seen a very simple calculation. Here we've seen an, let's say, one that's a little bit more complex with minimums and maximums. Now here we're going to create another, well, we're going to use another operation, but this time we're going to be using an if formula. Okay, so this if formula says if the transport price is lower than 200, the price is going to be 200. If it's greater than 200, then the price is going to be the price per box, whichever one we want to apply. Okay, so let's say the price per box is 50, and here there's one box. It should apply 200. Perfect. Now let's say it's 250. Now it should apply 250. Okay, so here we're using an if operation. As I mentioned, each of these buttons here have a different mathematical calculation. Okay, this is the if operation where we're saying if the transport price is lower than 200, then apply 200. If not, or if false, then apply the price per box. Okay, all of this multiplied by the number of boxes, of course. And that would be our result. Okay, so now we can add, for example, 250 boxes and the price per box is 50. We can see obviously it's not applying 50, it's applying 200. Okay, let's use the calculator to make sure this is working. So if we say 250 multiplied by 50, the result would be 12,500. Okay. Okay, here I just realized it's not giving me the correct value. So I'm going to review my formula. Okay, so here it's not correct. It shouldn't be transport price, it should be price per box. So if the price per box is lower than 200, then apply 200. If not, then apply the price per box and multiply that per the boxes. I'm going to save and exit. See if I've solved my formula. So I'm going to say, okay, 250 times 50. Okay, let's see if this is correct. So it should be applying right now a minimum of 200. So it should be 250 times 200. Okay, that's correct. Now I'm going to say, let's say 10 boxes and here 300. So now it should be applying the price per box because this amount is greater than 200. Okay, so let's see the result. 10 times 300. Perfect. Okay. So we can see this is working. If I input something lower, for example, 20, it's still going to be applying 200. Okay. So we've already checked all of these. I've checked them. I fixed a couple of them that weren't working properly. And here we've also checked this with the calculator to make sure everything is working correctly. Okay. So we already know how to configure these calculations, these mathematical operations. Remember, it's quite straightforward. All we have to do is select a system task in the button. We have to select mathematical operation. Okay, important to save and update afterwards if we want to show the results in the form. If I'm not going to use these results in the form, I don't need to update. Then here, when we say we want a mathematical operation, we have to say where do we want to store the result in, and we select whatever field we want. We continue, and here we input our formula. Okay, and that way whatever we have here in this formula is going to be stored in this field over here. Okay. Now the next thing I'm going to do is create a button from scratch so we can see how this is created from beginning to start. All I have to do is add a button, give it a name, continue, add the action I want. I select system task, the type of system task, the function, for example, this one. And now I select the type of operation I want. for example, a direct operation, a mathematical operation. I'm going to say mathematical. I'm going to drop into the field price a numeric value, whatever I want. For example, 999. There we go. I'll save and update, and I'll save and exit. There you go. So I have my button configured. I'll save the form. Now I'll update it here. And now what's going to happen when I click on this button? Manually, I'm going to upload this value. Okay, so you can see it's really easy to create these type of uploads. Okay, there we go. It's just a matter of seconds. All we have to know is learn the possibilities that these buttons have. I'm going to delete this button now. I don't want it. It was just for the demonstration. Okay, I'm going to show you how to configure these other operations. For example, with dates. Here I have an operation where I want to evaluate the data packing plus a certain numeric value, and we're going to upload the result in another date field. Okay. For example, I say the data packing was on the 1st. Okay. Today we're on the 24th. Okay. So I'm going to say the expiration is 24 days. I click on this button. So tomorrow the product is going to expire. Okay. So it's quite straightforward. It's grabbing a date field. I'm adding a numeric value, and it's giving me the result in this numeric field. Now here I have another one. It's quite similar, but let's say it's a little bit different. Here I have two known dates, and I want to update, or I want to upload the value into this duration field. So I'm going to say, when was the departure date and time? I'm going to say, well, it was on the 24th, today, at 10. And the arrival date, when was that? The arrival date was on the 25th at 10. So here's going to give me the amount of hours. So I'm going to click here, and it tells me 24 hours. Now let's make a few changes. For example, instead of the 25th, I'm going to say the 26th. There we have 48 hours. We're going to add a couple more hours, for example, at 12. And there we have 50 hours. Okay, so we're going to see now how to configure these types of operations with dates. All we have to do is create our button or add our system task to the diagram. And here, instead of selecting a mathematical operation, I've selected a date operation. And when I select dates, it's going to tell us where do you want to store the result. And depends, here we can select either a date field, or as in this other scenario, we could select a numeric field as the destination. So here we can see, here I've selected a numeric field. All right, so the destination is this field here for this button, and the destination in this button is this field here. Okay, now when we say that we want to store in our operation with dates, we want to store the result in a date field. Let's see what happens. So we select the date here field here, and now here it tells us, okay, what do you want to store into this date field? You can store counting from certain moments and a certain amount of unit growth. Here we selected as the moment in which we want to start counting a date field that we have in the panel of our process. For example, date of packing, but we could also say manual and select a manual value here. But let's say we selected panel and we marked a field in the panel. And here it says, okay, how much do you want it to grow? What field in the panel do you want to take into account for it to grow? Or manually, do you just want to input a value here? Okay. So we could do any of these two options down here. So here we're saying, okay, when someone clicks on the button, evaluate the date of packing, add units based on this numeric field. Okay. And here you say the type of unit. For example, what do you want to count? Do you want to count natural days, working days, months, minutes, hours? Okay. And here you also have an option for substitution when there's holidays and things like that. Okay. And obviously here we have the conditions. Remember we said only when certain conditions are met, the upload can be performed. In this case, we don't have any conditions, so it's always going to be performed. Okay, but here we can see the configuration is also quite straightforward. All we have to do is select on dates, select the result field. Where do we want to store the result? For example, the expiration date. We click on continue. And that says, okay, from when do you want to start counting? From whatever value is in the date of packing field. It's a date field. And how much do you want it to grow? Okay, I can select panel and select another field. Okay. Anyways, I'm going to delete this. We already have our example. And I'm going to show you the next example, this one over here. Okay, so here we've also saved an update. We selected the option dates, but in this case, the result is stored in a field that's called duration hours. And here we're going to store it. This is a numeric value. So here it's going to offer us two different date fields, and the difference between one date field and the other date field is going to be stored in this numeric field. And what type of unit do we want to store in here? The number of hours between these two date fields, the number of days between these date fields. Okay, so here we've also got all these options. Okay, so now we already know how to create mathematical operations, how to create operations with dates. Now we're going to see a few more operations. These are quite simple. Well, they can be quite simple, but they can also be a little bit complex depending on the source and the destination. Let's see them first in execution to see what they do. So let's say here, well, I'm going to update, so this button disappears. No, 1 second. There we go. Okay, so here we have some other uploads. For example, this button, basically the only thing it's going to do is update in this field the value yes. Okay, so I click here and we can see it's updating the value yes inside of this field. This is what we call a direct upload. Later on we're going to see it. And then here it says upload no, but in this case it says only if the field is empty. So the field approved is not empty, it has a value. So if I click here, it shouldn't do anything. I click and obviously it doesn't do anything. Let's see what happens if I mark no. Well, obviously, even though it does upload no, it wouldn't look like it because it's already marked in no. Let's see what happens if we leave the field empty. Okay, now it should upload the value no because it meets the condition. There we go. Okay, so let's see this in the configuration. If I go here, all we've done is added a system task, and in the system task we selected a direct upload. Okay, here we're not creating operations with formulas, mathematical formulas. We're not trying to create operations with dates. Here we're just directly updating or uploading a value in a certain field that's called approve. So when we click here on direct, we just say, where do you want to store the information? In a field that's called approve. There we go. And what value do you want to update? The value yes, for example. Okay, and that's it. Or we could copy the value from another yes, no field. Okay, for example, this one. We can say whatever we have in the field approved, I want it to be stored in this other field. So I'm going to copy the value from this field and drop it into this one here. Okay, so there's all kinds of different options. I'm going to delete this. Okay, so here we said, I want to store in approved the value yes, and besides there's no condition. Oh, there is a condition. Approved equals to empty. Okay. And now let's see the other one. Here it says no. Okay. And here we're doing the exact opposite. We're uploading in approved the value no, and the condition is that approved must be equal to empty. Okay, so in any case, if it's not empty, it's not going to work. So if I click here on update yes, it's not going to work. If I have marked the option yes and I click here on update no, it's not going to work either, only when it's empty. So if I empty it, then it does work, because that's when the conditions are met in order for these uploads to be performed. Okay, so we already know how to create direct uploads. I'm going to use this one here. Okay, here it says enter the process code and the exact time of entry in the line. And this one here says extract 5 existing digits from the digit number 2 position to the 6th position, both inclusive, from the base reference of the process. Okay, so here I'm going to extract a piece of information from the reference, and here I'm going to make a composition of data. Let's see it first in execution. So I'm going to grab just a few digits here, and I'm going to store them down here. So we click on textual segmentation. So we've segmented this part of the text, okay? And we've dropped it, well, not all of that, only this part here. And we've dropped it into this field. So we've copied only part. There we can see it. And now this other field is going to create a composition based on the reference and some other values. Okay, so here we can see we've composed all this information. We have the date in which it was uploaded, and besides we have the value that it's uploaded, the reference. Now let's see the configuration of these two buttons. First, the textual composition. So basically we've added a system task, and within the system task, we created an operation. This is also direct operation where we said we want to store in tracking code a composition. Okay, tracking code is it's a text value, a text field, and the composition is this here. Reference and uploaded in and the date. Okay, so basically all we did is we typed in some text here, for example, text, and now here we added a value from the panel of the process, for example, price. Okay, so now this is going to be stored in this field. Let's see the result now that I've applied a simple change. Okay, so price, let's say it's $9.99, and here I'm going to click on textual composition, and there we can see it. We have text and $9.99. Okay, so we already had all of the information we had before, but besides we've added this. Okay, so we can see that's pretty easy too. All we have to say is we want a direct upload. Where do we want to store the information? Here I can select the text field. Oops, not a whole number. We want one line text. I can select this one, for example. I hit continue. And then here I can say I want a composition. And here in my composition, I write whatever I want, and I bring whatever panel fields I want. Okay, it's pretty straightforward and easy. Once we have that done, when the button is triggered or the flow activates the system task, it's going to grab all of this information and upload it in this field here. Okay. All right. So let's see the next button, this one here. Here, basically, what we've done is a segmentation where we said grab the base reference and chop it up, starting from position 2 and up to position 6. Okay. And grab that result and drop it into this tracking code field. So that's basically what it's done. It said, well, when I click here, it grabs from position number 2, that would be the T, up to position number 6. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so this is what it's going to grab. All of this information here, and it's going to drop it into this field here. Okay, I'm going to explain these three buttons down here. So basically here we have a text. This is a comment log, and we're gonna, oh, this is a business rule, sorry. This is a business rule, and I'm gonna upload the business rule into the panel. I already mentioned this is going to be explained later on throughout the course, okay? But this is just a brief demonstration. So I click here, and it's grabbing all this information from a business rule, and is dropping it into this text field I have, into this rich multiple line text field I have in my form. Okay, so I'm going to show the three first, and then I'll go back and show you the configuration. So now here what it's going to do, it's going to grab some text, for example, hello. There we go. I click here. It should be dropping this into the comment log, but maybe it's not correctly configured. Let me see. Let's save first. Maybe it's missing a save action. Now I click on it. No, it's not really working. I'll have to check it out. And now here we have a library field. I'm going to drop in a document in here. 1 second, I'll click here. So I can use whatever document, for example, this one here. And I want to copy whatever document I uploaded here into this other library up here. So I'm going to click on this button, And there we can see it's worked. Okay. Now I have the document in this library and I've also copied it into this other library. Okay. So let's see the configuration of these three buttons and let's make sure, or let's check and see why this one is not working. Okay, so first of all, we have this one that's bringing a business rule to the panel of the process. We added the action, we added a system task action. And once we did this, we clicked on the button rule. When we click on rule, it allows us to bring a business rule to the panel. Here we already have one, obviously, because this is the one we already brought. But we could click on add rules and it would show me all the different rules I could bring to the panel of my process. I'm not going to select any other ones. Here we already have one selected. Basically, it's bringing me a business rule that's called supervisor's instructions. Okay, this business rule is the one that we're bringing to the panel of our process. So when we click on the button, oops, I've added it again. So when we click on the button, it's going to bring me the value of this business rule. Now let's go to the next one. This one is not really working. So we have one system task. Well, this one's not really configured. I'm going to have to delete it. So here we're uploading the one-line text. No, this is not correct. 1 second, I'm going to delete this. I'm going to try to configure it again. Okay, so what we want to do is store here in a comment log field this text, a one-line text. So when I click here, I'm going to select system task. I'll select direct. Here I'll select my as destination my text field. One-line text. No, sorry, the destination is the multiple line text. So I'm going to select here. I'm going to filter by multiple line text. It's not this one either. 1 second. Okay, I think I found what's happening here. So we have to select, well, first we want to save and update, and then we have to create a direct operation. We have to select as destination our comment log. It's going to be this one here. I'll hit the button continue. So this is the destination. Where are we going to store the data in our comment log? And where's the source of our data in a one-line text field here? Okay, I'll save and exit. So this should be working now. But before we test it, I'm going to show you the configuration of this other button. And basically here we have a system task. We have an operation. It's an upload where the destination is a document field, library field, and the source is a different library field. Okay. So here we have one library field. It's going to copy the content and drop it into this other library field. Here we don't have the option selected. Okay, we only have the option all because we want to move all the documents or copy all the documents from the source to the destination. Okay, let's test these changes that I've done in this button. So here we have our comment log and here we have our one-line text field. And I click here, let's see what happens. Okay, now it is working. It was just not properly configured, not correctly configured. Okay, so with this here, we've already seen how to configure all of these different operations. I hope you guys understood them correctly. It's not very difficult once you get used to this and you will need something in a process. All you have to do is think, okay, what do I need? Do I need a mathematical operation? Do I need to make an operation with dates? Or is it actually a direct upload? Any of these other ones.